Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a bit of a beatdown by the Florida Panthers on the Winnipeg Jets. I'm not sure what you say about a game like that, other than, I hearken back to the first game that the Winnipeg Jets played against the Florida Panthers. I thought it looked pretty similar. This is a Florida Panthers team that I think left no doubt. If you're a Jets fan, you should walk away from this situation and take a look and think, this is where my team is, even at their best in this season. This is where my team is, and this is where the Florida Panthers are. This is two teams in entirely different leagues. There was the pushes that the Winnipeg Jets did have in that game seemed to be handled fairly well. I disagreed with the broadcast. They tried to make it sound as though the second period was a really dangerous period for the Winnipeg Jets. I don't think it was. The only thing that they seemed to have in that game, in the way that they were able to generate shots, was point shots. Those are great if they end up, if you've got a guy in front of the net like Paul Stastny was for the one goal they scored in this game, right in the kitchen of Sergei Bobrovsky, creating a little bit of chaos that turns into a nice goal. I mean, that's a great goal. That's the kind of goals that you want to create. But for the most part, what I saw in that game was the Jets getting a whole bunch of point shots in that second period without a lot of traffic in front of the net. And they made Sergei Bobrovsky, who's a great goaltender, they made him look phenomenal on this night. Absolutely phenomenal. And I just think that at all points of the game, what you saw was every reason you have to believe in the Florida Panthers was on display. They've got great finish, but they've got great commitment to team defense. They've got great skill. They're able to find each other. A couple of times, there were a couple of plays where I saw three Florida Panthers get down, push, take a shot, turn it over, and just hustle back as hard as they could to get back into the play. There was a point later in the game where I saw Kyle Connor got a chance, took it down the ice, and all of a sudden he was surrounded by three Florida Panthers. It's a 3-on-1. It started out looking like it may be one of the Jets' better chances of the game and ended up looking, like bees absolutely swarming the Jets' best player. To me, this is just a clear cut. If you were thinking that this Winnipeg Jets team was this phenomenal team that just was a little bit off, these are the kind of games that you need to look out throughout this season and figure out that the Winnipeg Jets are exactly kind of where they deserve to be. Could they be higher? Yes, I do believe they could be higher. But the fact of the matter here is that team is heads and shoulders above the Winnipeg Jets. We're going to get into a little bit of what the players had to say, because we love to talk about the truth serum. If you watch this show, that I love when the Jets finally break out the truth serum. It doesn't happen often enough, in my opinion. It got broken out by one of their players here tonight. But before we get into that, let's bring in my main man, Ken Weeb, who's going to definitely have some strong, spicy takes on this if I do say so myself. Let's bring in the guy with the best music in the business. Here's Kenny. So, Kenny, I'm going to go out on a limb here tonight with a really spicy take and say I saw a beatdown tonight. What did you see?
Yeah, no spicy takes required. This was a one-sided affair. There's no doubt about it. You saw an elite team take it to a team that, as Nikolai Ehlers pointed out, was not ready to play the right way. And when you don't play the right way against a team like the Florida Panthers that has three excellent lines of scorers and a fourth line that can do the job, you get beat in lopsided fashion. I think the score flattered the Jets, quite frankly. The second period was definitely better for the Jets, but you're even in shots on goal because it's score effects. And Sean, we've all been in those games before. It's a 4-0 game, but when a team has scored 6 goals and you're taken it to the opponent. I mean, those games are hard to play for the team that's in the lead at some times because you don't want to stray from your structure. And, those are those kind of quote unquote point night type of games. But that's the challenge. And you know what? When you are an elite team and you are, we've seen the gold standard twice, Sean, on consecutive Fridays, and the gold standard is excellent. The gold standard is a level the Jets want to get back to. They're not at that level. Yes, the Jets played the Avalanche tough last Friday. The Avalanche were missing 2 of their top 4 forwards, if not their top 3 forwards, and played the backup. Tonight they played a team who was missing a top defenseman in Aaron Ekblad, but they played a team with all of its offensive weapons in full force, and those offensive weapons, quite frankly, took it to the Winnipeg Jets. And I agree with you. I love Nikolai Ehlers. We'll get into him after the buffet here, but I love Nikolai Ehlers is. Talk about leadership so much. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers is another one of those guys who cares so much. He is an evolving leader. Not only is his game at an elite level, he's putting more on his shoulders as a leader, and I love that about his game. He is quickly approaching 30 goals, and most importantly to me, he continues to drive play, but his accountability, he talked about accountability not being at a high enough level. His accountability level is primo right now. And he was ticked off, quite frankly, about being on the ice for 2 goals against, and was not afraid to point the finger at himself. So, we'll get into Connor Hellebuyck a little bit quickly, too, before I step away from the table here. Was it his best night? No. But, I mean, folks, that's a mercy pull. The second goal by Forsling, fine. It kind of
went underneath management pull.
Exactly. It's because he's playing tomorrow night. That's the only reason why he left the net. Would he have liked to have had the 4th goal? Sure. But why is Forsling so wide open?
I don't have a problem with the 4th goal. I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, this is a guy who's got.
It's not a great shot, though.
It's got, but those are the kind that go in 5-hole, right? Like you can tell by his body posture, he thinks he's trying to go top corner, and then the guy never gets it off the ice, and it slides under the pad. But this is what happens when you've got all kinds of chaos on both sides of you, and you give a guy all the time in the world to score on that goal. And is it a great goal? No. But I don't think it's as bad as it looks, and never mind the fact that it's the 4th goal on a night where I don't fault him for any of those first 3 goals. I mean, we're going to fault him for the 3rd goal. It's a great shot where, there's that much space in there, and Forsling puts it in that spot. Never mind the fact that Hellebuyck had just stopped a breakaway before that. I mean, what do you want from this guy at this stage,
No kidding. I mean, again, could he have been a slightly more aggressive? Yes, but that is nitpicking to its finest degree. This is totally a goalie management pull. He's going to be starting against the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow night. It's not a light a fire under your starter because you really need him to come through. The Jets were not good enough in front of him, and Connor Hellebuyck will be ready to go in the next game. It was a great play. I mean, here, Doug, it's not a perfect shot, but it's a perfect play by Huberdeau. I mean, how did he have all that time to find the trailer? And secondly, why was no one picking up the trailer? The Jets certainly, Sean, did not get a lot of chances where the trailer was unencumbered and to the goal. I think I counted 1 where Nikolai Ehlers had a drop pass to Morgan Barron. But outside of that, they were not finding the trailer nearly enough. So... goaltending is not the reason the Jets lost. Bobrovsky was solid, but this was just an effort where the Florida Panthers were a superior team, and they took it to their opponent who was not prepared to play the right way. You don't want to. I've got news for people, Sean. You don't want to get into a rush game with the Florida Panthers. This is very simple. That is what the Jets did. They got themselves into a rush game, and they, quite frankly, were not ready to measure up against Jonathan Huberdeau, Alexander Barkov, Claude Giroux, and company.
Well, I want to get into the types of offense that Florida used tonight, because I know what you're saying, and I know that they score that goal off the rush. But if you take a look at their goals over the course of the game, there's different styles of offense there. And I know that Julie Sue had asked earlier on, what's the right way? What is the right way that because you said it a couple times, the Jets didn't show up ready to play the game the right way. We're going to get into that, but first, I just wanted to make sure we give a shout out to one of our sponsors with this. The slickest of graphics that we get to bring in here, the Johnston Group, people that we're just so happy to have on board with us. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. And I wanted to get into this, Ken, because we talked a little bit about the right way, and I know that Julie Sue had also made a comment here. If I take a look in the comments about the Cats being a team that can outscore their opponents and their mistakes, this is a true statement. But this statement has nothing to do with tonight. I thought what you saw from the Florida Panthers, and mind you, I don't think we saw it at that great of an effort from them. But what you did see was them committed to playing the game the right way. I think that there's another level, if not two levels, that Florida Panthers team has. But the way that they were able to get back, shut down, like Ken had said earlier on, take away the trailer, put up that back pressure. But here's the thing. I was talking about the Winnipeg Jets, and I will say this. It feels like when the Winnipeg Jets need a goal, and if you were watching the shots tonight, you saw the shots shoot up. This is what I was talking about earlier. The Jets' way to get offense, if they're trying to get gritty and get to the front of the net, is to put the puck up high to the slot, have Nate Schmidt take a shot, or Pionk or Josh Morrissey get a shot on net, and then try and get guys in front of the net. I didn't think the Jets did a very good job of getting guys to the front of the net. Why? Because the Florida Panthers defense were committed to keeping the front of the net clear. The one egregious time they didn't, the Jets got a goal, but other than that, there weren't a lot of mistakes there. So you want to ask about playing the game the right way. That's to play it the right way. Go into your zone and battle to keep the front of your net clear, which is clearly something the Jets haven't been good at this year, because we've talked time and again about how bad this team is at giving up shots right straight away in the slot. But here's the other part about this. The Jets, to me this year, this is what I've seen from them for the most part. They've got two ways of putting up offense. One is what I just talked about, getting it to the point, trying to get to the front of the net and throwing it into the front of the net. But the other is to do that cross-ice seam pass perimeter play that Nikolai Ehlers was talking about. And we'll get into Nick Ehlers' quote. But you all know what I'm talking about. It's that kind of snake charmer offense that I tell you about, where the Jets try and kind of push you back, throw it across the seam, and put it into the back of the net with that one-timer. It looks beautiful when you do it, but especially at this time of year, that kind of offense starts to shrink. Now, here's the deal. I've talked about this in the past. I think we're up to 26 or 27 games now it's been that the Jets have played, and in that 27-game stretch, they've beat two teams over the playoff line. This is what happens when they play a good team. Like, get used to it. This is the Winnipeg Jets. The last 27 games have told us everything that we need to know about the Winnipeg Jets. They lose to good teams, but they can beat bad teams. And we saw them score these kind of goals over this stretch of hockey. They've played against the bad teams. So that's their two types of offense. Fire it from the point and try and get to the front of the net and create chaos, or play on the perimeter and try and look for those nice, pretty goals. What we saw from Tampa tonight, the first goal of the game, is what the Jets were talking about. They put it off shot from the point, off the backboards. Who's right there, got position on his D-man, puts it in the net, is Jonathan Huberdeau. Next goal is what I noticed, and if you want to think about this, think about what the Montreal Canadiens' fourth line did to the Jets in the playoffs last year. That Armia and Stahl and Perry group, that they just got the puck in behind in the net and then just ground it to throw it in front of the net and pop it in. So it's not just shots coming from up front, or from the point that, a defenseman can face, try and knock that down and move the puck up ice. we saw from Florida, they get a little bit of that kind of offense on the second goal where they grind it down low and then throw it in front of the net or cross crease. There's a little more skill involved there, clearly, with Jonathan Huberdeau than you get from that Montreal Canadiens fourth line. But boom, it's in the back of the net. Then you've got that rush offense that they're able to create on the fourth goal. And they've also got that, the heads up kind of offense that you get when you're firing it down the ice on the third goal of the game, which was their second breakaway of that power play and of that shift, basically. So there's just an example in their first four goals of the four different kinds of offense that they're creating. And I just think Nikolai Ehlers was talking about, and let's get into it, Ken, I'll bring this up, but Nikolai Ehlers was talking about, playing the game the right way or whatever. And I keep talking about this kind of perimeter play that the Jets love to fall into. But Nick Ehlers was asked about accountability. And he said, when you don't play the right way, when it's not going for you and you keep trying to push nice plays and all of that. Exactly what I'm talking about. All these pretty plays that look so good and make the Jets look so good when they pull it off. But Nikolai Ehlers is talking about the problem it is when you're trying to do that. He says you're just, putting your team in a tough position. And it's not just one or two guys, it's almost everyone. I don't really know how to explain it. It's just we're not playing the right way. We've got to find a way to tomorrow, and that's what we're going to do. Now, I love his confidence in saying that they're going to get out and do this tomorrow. But this is one of these moments for me, Ken, similar to what we saw from Paul Stastny last year, where Nikolai Ehlers is coming out and saying exactly what the problem is on this team, what this problem has been on this team for a long time. And thank God we're finally hearing it, because if no one is willing to admit that this is a problem, I don't think it's a problem that gets solved. And it's about time we started talking about this, because this problem needed to be solved 4 months ago.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. I mean, I would say it's interesting too, right? So the first goal, there is obviously an element of luck involved, fortuitous bounce for the Florida Panthers, but you can't say it's just a lucky play because they tried several other shots off the backboard. So
it's the old Tyler Myers play he always tried when he was with the Winnipeg Jets over and over. Yeah.
Is it a tough play to defend? Of course it is. How do you front a player when you don't expect the puck to be going wide and to him? But yes, the Jets. So again, the Jets get caught, and Dave Lowry was quite frustrated also. I mean, why don't they play that way? Well, because that means you're not making pretty plays, right? So the Jets love highlight reel goals. They've scored highlight reel goals, for the last, since 2016 or 17, even before they actually got good. So it's fine. Dave Lowry is not saying take away your skill, but you can't make errors that feed the transition game of the opponent, right? So That's what the Jets have done far too often, where their puck management gets them in trouble. And they think the only way to get back into games is by going end to end, which that's not going to work either. When the Jets play the right way, much like Nikolai Ehlers said, they can have success, but they're not committed enough to doing it on a regular basis, and that is why it hasn't worked out for him. I mean, and that's what Nikolai Ehlers said. We don't do it enough, which is why we are exactly where we are. Those are Ehlers' own words, right? So, yeah, it's interesting. I enjoyed Nikolai Ehlers' honesty. I mean, again, but he's not pointing the finger at others. He's coming out and saying flat out, their line was on for the first two goals against by Jonathan Huberdeau. That is not acceptable, not good enough. And he was sour about it, about his own play, and then the fact that the Jets weren't able to get back into the game because they were unwilling to be committed enough to make it a hockey game. It's very interesting. I mean, the word accountability is something that gets tossed around a lot, and I understand this. I have an easy answer to that. Blake's not wired that way. Blake is a positive person. He wants to talk about positivity. Sean, that's a fact. Sean doesn't want to talk about the negative things. This is not news to anyone who's covered him for 11 years. I mean, would some people like to inject Blake with truth serum? Sure, but I think if you're waiting for Blake to erupt and go crazy, I don't think you know Blake Wheeler. That's not the kind of person he is. anyways, that's another story entirely. I mean, it's some people are just wired to speak out differently than others, and that's the way it goes. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but that's just the way that he is. That's the way that he's wired. He would much prefer to kind of accentuate the positive. That's kind of, it's not to say he ignores the reality. I mean, Blake is the person who on day one of training camp said, easy does it with the comparison, suggesting we're going to be in the Stanley Cup final. He's the one who said it doesn't matter what kind of team you have on paper. He doesn't want to talk about 2018. That's a long time ago. When you're a 35-year-old captain and you haven't got a sniff of the conference final since 2018, Blake doesn't care about the highlight reel from 2018, right? I mean, that's just sort of the way that it goes. I don't think it's an alternate reality that he lives in. It just, those things he prefers to talk about privately. So, again, as media members, we love the fact that Nikolai Ehlers comes out and is a little bit more open with some of the faults and the difficulties, right? I mean, that's the way that it is for him. And I applaud him for that also.
I just, and this is, I'm just going to say something quick on this. I mean, the conversation with the media is the conversation with fans. That's the way I have always saw it. I know that not every player sees it like that. I know not every organization sees it like that. But I think that what we do, what we get from the players, we take to the fans. That's our job, right? So unless they want to have that conversation directly with the fans, at some point you have to have that conversation. I get that Blake Wheeler would rather have those conversations, and you're 100% right. He'd rather have those conversations in the dressing room. It just seems like a real clash to me when you've got the captain whose job it is supposed to be to not only take care of his team, but interact with fans and then not have that conversation with fans. Like, if you can't talk about the obvious that's happening and address these obvious things, and not be able to take a look and say, you're out of the playoffs. Here's the reason why we're not in the playoffs or whatever, and have the conversations that Statsny is coming out to have, that people pointed out in the chat room. Kopp has been able to have, that Connor Hellebuyck has been able to have, to a degree. Mark Scheifele, has been able to have. He was the first one to come out and say this team has no identity. And tonight, Nick Ehlers is able to have. It's just it feels that something is missing, that you can't have that conversation at that point. Before we go, Ken, I just want to move on, and I want to thank our friends at Cambrian who are sponsors with us. We're just so happy to have them on. We've talked about Cambrian and the free banking with Unfee. We've talked about low mortgages. Ken and I both have our mortgages with Cambrian. We've talked, or what we'd like to talk about, is the Cambrian Credit Union credit card. Cambrian has a great MasterCard options, including no-fee cards, low interest rate cards, and reward cards. Until June 30th, get a Cambrian Credit Union World MasterCard and receive $120 first-year annual fee rebate, as well as 15,000 bonus points, which means $150 in cash equivalent. That's a total of $270 in cash equivalent. Conditions apply. Learn more about these promotions at cambrian.mb.ca. And I wanted to say something. We had Hustler on our long-form program. He made a real good point. I kind of wanted to point this out. We love having these conversations, and Hus does a great job. And the illegal curve guys, we noticed a lot of people came in from there. We love doing this. There's costs associated with this. It's this simple. Without the people who back us, without the people who financially back us, without our sponsors, we just wouldn't be able to do this very much longer. And so we all know what happened with TSN Radio when it went down. We all know that this is a place that we're trying to create a space for you fans out there to come and have conversations and have sports talk in this market. And this is just the way I see it. With the Johnson Group, with Cambrian on our show, it's because of them that we can have these conversations that we're all enjoying. They are investing in sports talk in this city, and we're so happy that they're doing it. We appreciate it so much, and we hope that you all appreciate it as well. You wanted to talk about Connor Hellebuyck, Kenny. Where do you want to go with that?
No, I mean, I think that we covered most of it. Eric Comrie coming in was just because Hellebuyck was, we talked about this the other day before we knew that the game was going to be postponed because of weather. I wondered if Comrie might get the middle game, and then Hellebuyck would obviously get both on the weekend. I think he probably would have got both on the weekend anyway, but the issue for Dave Lowry at the time was that there were already 26 shots on goal for Hellebuyck, through 2 periods. And, they ended up going to 42. So, would Hellebuck have said he's ready to go still on Saturday night? Probably yes, but the workload was so high that you had to get him out after 2, because otherwise you might have put the second night's game in jeopardy. And I mean, I also, too, a quick one for Eric Comrie. I mean, a couple of nice goals against him, and then people will say, oh, there's more evidence that Eric Comrie's not ready. Well, give me a break. He went in against a elite level team that is taking it to their opponent, and Eric Comrie comes in cold for the third period. I mean, come on now. That's again a scenario where you're just looking to blame someone. The goaltending wasn't the issue, the major issue for the Winnipeg Jets. It was their unwillingness to make simple plays. Like Nikolai Ehlers talked about it. I asked him directly after he gave the great answer about the right way. I said, well, how do you get back to playing the right way? And his answer was very simple. You chip the puck out, you chip the puck in, you get on their defenseman, you shoot the puck, and you work hard, you skate fast. It's as simple as that. So, again, this is not rocket science, and you're not asking the Jets to reinvent the wheel in terms of how they play. So, it's just, sorry, quick one about the Wheeler thing. What Blake shows publicly is not, I mean, again, he's not oozing sunshine every single day at the podium. That's not what I'm saying. But Blake is not a person who believes in dumping on his team when they're down. That's what I'm saying. He prefers to focus on the positives. That doesn't mean he ignores the failures or the shortcomings, just quickly on that front. So, I mean, the Jets got to be, how do you expect the Jets are going to respond? I mean, I asked Brendan Dillon at the end, I mean, Jets have talked a lot about belief, Sean, for a long time, where the road, it looked pretty dim for them. He said the right things as well. You just got to try to, it's an uphill battle. Things are tough, but you got to find a way to regroup. But I mean, today they did not play like a team that was feeling any urgency. But again, this is a tough swing for anyone. I mean, this is not a defense of the Winnipeg Jets by any stretch of the imagination. They were not good enough. They need to be a lot better in a number of areas. The Calgary Flames got swept by the Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Carolina Hurricanes. They're currently the second best team in the Western Conference. So it's not like the old days where, Florida was in the Southeast Division and they were not very good. And if you lost both games in Florida, it meant that you weren't focused and maybe you were playing golf or on the beach or whatever. Florida's a darn good hockey team. And if you're not at your best against them, they are going to take you to the woodshed.
You kind of went in a bunch of different directions there. I wanted to close out goaltending. I just got to say, sure. And I've talked about this quite a bit at this point. I've been on the record before. I think they should have given Comrie more chances. I don't think that goaltending was the issue here tonight. But I also think the fact that they're doing this thing where they threw him in net, they were good. Like you said, Ken, regardless, Hellebuck was going to be in the net tonight, and he was going to be in the net tomorrow. Pulling him in the third period tonight was just to make his load a little easier tomorrow. I just don't think this is the right way to do things. I know that you think, and I don't say you, I say the Jets. I know they think that they've got a goaltender who's special in Connor Hellebuck, and they do. I agree that they do. And I know that they've got a goaltender who's very strong-headed and strong-willed and wants to take the crease all the time. I think that he is maybe one of the more strong-headed goaltenders like that, but I don't think this is unique to Connor Hellebuck. He's not the only goaltender out there who wants to get in the net and play, as much as he possibly can. There has to be a decision that's made for the betterment of the team. And I just think we're at this stage where, it's felt like this for a long time. Well, you got to keep riding Hellebuck if we're going to get back into this. And I don't think that's the right way to do things. You came in with a goaltending duo. That was the team. That was the plan. This is your entire team. You need your entire team to win. I don't like this down the stretch. And I say that by saying this was not Connor Hellebuck's fault here tonight. And you're entirely right about Comrie coming in cold off the bench. The goals that were scored are great chances. There's nothing on him. That first one is a really tough one to stop. And that second one, the sixth of the game, that Deekford, that's the old Adam Lowry breakaway move that he's been pulling out for the vast majority of this season. But I just think that what we we've done down the stretch here. I've been on the record about this, and I look down the stretch here. If they're going to keep playing Connor Hellebuyck, like the Jets are out of the playoffs. It's not they're not mathematically eliminated, but they're not making the playoffs. And you were talking about belief, Ken. The Jets don't believe they're making the playoffs. If you want a good example, it's in their first period tonight. It's in the lack of effort you see from them time and time again over. This team does not believe in itself. They can say everything they want. They can say the right thing and get up into the podium. I can tell you right now, it's a stock answer. I don't care what position you play on the Winnipeg Jets. You ask me about what you do going forward, and you come out and you say, well, there's still a chance, and we still believe we're going to put everything on the line and hope we get a little bit of help. It's over. This is over. This is done. The Winnipeg Jets know that. And so for me to conduct yourself in this manner where you're riding Connor Hellebuyck, which I am fully on board in suggesting, Ken, riding Connor Hellebuyck now this year like you did last year and the year before and the year before that is going to have is going to create, I believe, problems down the road. I believe it created problems this year. I believe it created problems last year. I believe it's going to continue creating problems going forward. I think there's one goalie in the history of the game who you could ride to the degree that you've rode Connor Hellebuyck, and that is, is Marty Brodeur, who is just a freak of nature, who is able to take that load. But I think you can point
Kiprusoff also. Yeah.
Kiprusoff is a guy whose numbers consistently went down year after year after year because they tried to treat him like he was Marty Brodeur. There's only one Marty Brodeur. The guy it didn't look like an athlete, but he was made of absolute stainless steel. The guy did not break down. He didn't break down. And I'm not saying that Connor, Dave Lowry talked about this. He said they've got metrics that they follow to see if he's getting tired or not. I don't know if it's mental. I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you this. I take a look at the numbers, and I've been convinced long before Connor Hellebuyck ever came into this league that the only goaltender who could ever handle the workload that was put in front of him to that degree where you're asking a guy to play 70 games a year is Marty Brodeur, and that's it. And I don't think there was any reason to do that this year, and I just think the Jets are making the wrong decisions. And how you get out of a situation like this, to me, I'm thinking about what's happening next year, as a lot of people in the chat room are talking about. The decisions you make now can make you better next year. The sooner you address the fact that you're not playing the right way, the sooner you get Nick Ehlers walk out to the podium and say it's not just one guy, it's a whole bunch of guys playing the wrong way and we can't figure it out. The sooner you say that and then have to face the grilling from you and me and other people in the media saying, why aren't you playing the right way? The sooner you start asking those questions to yourself, the sooner you get better. But you got to start doing the right things. And to me, riding Connor Hellebuyck into the ground and hopping off him and stepping up to the bar to slake your thirst like it's an Old West movie and you just killed your horse on the way to the next town is not the way to do this. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I would be going with Comrie tomorrow just for the sake of give that kid an opportunity to do this. Like I said, we know this is over. The Jets know it's over. This whole pretense of riding Connor Hellebuyck because every game matters down the stretch is not the way you do this. You win as a team, and that includes your backup goaltender.
Well, I mean, if the Jets don't get things turned around on this road trip against three elite teams and one also legitimate contender, they will have the mathematics go against them very shortly, and then things will change to a degree. Just one quick one here from Justin. Justin, the Jets are only allowed the 4 recalls after the NHL trade deadline. That is a rule that is meant to protect American Hockey League teams. So even if secondly, the Jets aren't going to just turn it over until they're actually mathematically out of it, probably. It's nice to see Dylan Sandberg playing well and flourishing, but I believe for surely the Jets have used 1 recall. It's possible that they have 2 of them used, depending on how things go. I think Mikey Asamont was up on emergency also. They have been able to use more than 1 player because of emergency conditions, but you can't just turn over and play 6 Moose players at the end of the year. I mean, do I want to see David Gustafsson? Sure. But, they're not going to just roll over the team and say, hey, 20 guys sit or 18 guys sit down. You can play 18 Moose players. The Moose are also in a situation where they're building for the playoffs. They've qualified. They're trying to improve their own standing. And you could make the argument that when a team is not playing the right way, sometimes you don't want to have those American Hockey League players subjected to the way the Jets are playing for fear that it could impact the way that the Moose play if you bring back some bad habits with you. So I do expect we'll see a couple of other Moose players get a shot here late in the year. And, good on Mikey Asimon for getting a chance. The Jets have had, I think, 7 guys make their NHL debuts this year. Good on them. But again, it's not about, you don't just surrender on a season and say, by the way, NHL guys, take a seat, we're going to play the prospects. I mean, that just isn't how it works. And the benefits for the Moose players of going potentially on a long playoff run are just as valuable or more as just getting a one-off or two-off games against NHL opponents just to sort of see where you're at. I mean, you're always measuring where people are at. It doesn't have to come at the NHL level, where, of course, you want to see how guys do at that level, but there will be opportunities coming, but I wouldn't expect the Jets to do that before they're actually eliminated. But again, there will be an opportunity here, and good on Dave Lowry for leaving Dylan Samberg in the lineup. I mean, he hasn't really given him a choice, but he's done a nice job, and I continue to be impressed by Samberg. I mean, that doesn't mean that things go perfectly all the time. Dylan Samberg, not knocking him, but he lost a puck battle with Sam Reinhart, and it led directly to a goal. It wasn't only his fault, because the coverage in front wasn't there. But, I mean, that's a play that, with a little bit more experience can be made. So, I mean, I understand Justin's point just fine. And, I mean, if you've watched the show, I wish that David Gustafsson had played more with the Jets this year. But him getting hurt twice in the first period hurt those chances. But I think that the fact that, if he had been playing 60 games this year, or 50, or even 20, you can make some mistakes at this level, but again, it's also not on the job training, especially for a team that went in with high hopes and aspirations of being a contender. But again, David Gustafsson is not an issue here. David Gustafsson is going to be part of the Winnipeg Jets next season and beyond. He's a good player. So let's turn the page from there.
Well, I wanted to get your thoughts on Barron tonight.
Yeah, I mean some nice plays. Again, that line wasn't as good as they were the other night. They gave up the 2 quick goals to Huberdeau's line. But again, that's a tough matchup. So I've liked Morgan Barron basically in every game that I've seen him play. I like the skill set, but I mean, I understand recency bias is something that folks kind of get sucked in by. I mean, a guy has a goal and an assist, and then naturally all the questions are about whether or not the guy is going to be a top 6 player. I mean, is it possible that Morgan Barron is a top 6 player? He has some tools that would allow him to play there. Yes, but you don't get the job based on 1 or 2 good games. I mean, I think it's much more likely. I've said this here. I said it with Huss. I think that he's going to be a guy that is a fixture with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton next year. And the person up here that is on Adam Lowry was probably the Jets' best player today for a lot of the game. Physical force, couple sticks in the face. And you're incorrect. Adam Lowry was the Jets' third-line center when they went to the Western Conference Final. So I don't want to hear the takes that Adam Lowry is not a third-line player on a good hockey team. He's already been one, and he will continue to be one. That year, Brian Little was bumped down to the 4th line. Adam Lowry's line was basically second over the boards when they went to the conference final. And yes, that changed a bit after Paul Stastny's arrival, but that was an important line for the Winnipeg Jets. So anyways, that's another quick sideways rant. Wasn't quite wake-up worthy, but it was, it was close. Well, no chance. Okay, well, the chance is that it's already happened, and he's still a double-digit goal scorer. So you're the one who needs to wake up, Grant. And if you don't believe me, go to our archives. When Adam Lowry signed an extension last year with the Winnipeg Jets, Elliot Friedman came on our show to say general managers were calling him, hoping that it wasn't true, because they wanted to sign him as an unrestricted free agent, not to be a 4th-line center, to be their checking line, 3rd-line center, and give them double digits in goals, which Adam Lowry has done in 5 of his NHL seasons, along with being an important part of the penalty kill. So yes, you can tell me to wake up all I want, but I'm dealing with the fact-based issues here. Let's
Um,
go.
I do have time for the argument that Lowry be used in more of like a fourth line role.
Why?
Just
You're
not
not
that.
paying a guy $3 million
Just
to play on the fourth line as your center.
I just think if you use the fourth line in a way that was like the heat, so like what I like about him is using him as kind of the heat-seeking missile to kind of, soften up a line, but then take your more scoring lines deeper into the game and up their ice time to the lines that have been beat down by Adam Lowry. Like I think about that. If we think about the fourth line again, we go back to that Canadiens model that was so successful in the playoffs last year. That worked, and maybe we shouldn't have been calling them the fourth line, but they were the fourth line on that team. If you had that model like that and tried to create, again, we've talked about trying to create more of a scoring top nine. If you had that and then had the usage of that fourth line to create a team that was still tough to play against, but had, was able to spread the scoring around a little bit more, I've got time for that argument. But
so next year it'll be Gustafsson, Svechnikov, and Harkins, or maybe even Morgan Barron. That will be the fourth line. They can give you some offense, but you're not playing them ahead of that other line. And Sean, we both covered the St. Louis Blues. They played what was their quote-unquote fourth line, Barbashev's line, occasionally against Bergeron, but they weren't playing fourth line minutes, so you can't call them the fourth line if you're using them in that kind of a role, which is the same for Lowry.
Well, and so what I mean by that is it's not the traditional sense, definitely not the Winnipeg Jets sense of a fourth line, which is kind of guys who get, thrown for a spell here and there and then get stable to the bench. I mean, it's basically what we see. They get some shifts earlier in the game and then you see them less and less. During the Paul Maurice era, that fourth line, you'd get them a couple times in the first period, sometimes in the second, often not at all in the third period, or very rarely in the third period. But I like what you're saying, because you're bringing up good examples of how other teams use fourth lines, and that a lot of times on the right night, your fourth line is not your fourth line, it's your second line, right? It just depends on the kind of game that you're playing. I guess I would talk about that usage of Adam Lowry. Maybe that would be, because you're right. We did our Kenny and Renny pop-up show when he signed, and Elliot Friedman came on and talked about how disappointed, and I could understand how they were. Like, imagine what a team like the Edmonton Oilers could do with Adam Lowry if he was out there grinding and shutting people down when they've got all the other guys who can take care of that. But this is the one thing that stands out as I was looking at his stats and his numbers from this year. And if you take a look, he's here, let's pick him. Adam Lowry's got 19 points in 72 games. I mean, if that's your third line center and you don't have 20 points yet on the year, that can be pretty difficult. Never mind the fact that how many of Adam Lowry's points this year have come on, shorthanded play, or I do believe he even has I'm pretty sure he's got a couple power play points. I think he's got definitely one. But I mean, that becomes the question, is if that's your third line and you're consistently using that as third line usage, are you getting enough offensively out of your third line center? I'm just proposing a different model of using him. Call it the fourth line, call it the third line, call it whatever you want, but use him selectively in games where some games, they may have, the second most ice time out of all the lines. Other games, maybe not as much. I was just suggesting that. Before we...
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
I mean, again, a lot of people argue that Paul Stastny could be used as a third line center. I mean, so next year, Gustafsson is the fourth line, right? Okay, so if you're saying that you'd rather have Lowry as the fourth line center instead of Tony Nato, fine. But then you have to find somebody else that can produce. So Adam Lowry has produced. I mean, Anton Lundell is a great example, Sean. Let's look no further than today's game. He's a rookie. He was chosen one player after Cole Perfetti. Cole Perfetti is an excellent draft pick. Okay? Cole Perfetti's hurt. If people missed our show the other day, Perfetti finally started skating again. Good news, but I don't expect to see him in the lineup still coming in before this year is over. If he does, that's great for him. But he's only at the light skating stage. I'm expecting Perfetti to be ready for next training camp. But Lundell has come in and been just an absolute, incredible player on the third line. The Panthers have the best third line probably in hockey. They're producing, and you can use them against other teams' top players. But they also have Sam Reinhart on the third line. Sam Reinhart has spent his entire career basically as a top line or a top six player. Mason Marchment got his entire season turned around by playing the Winnipeg Jets in the meeting in Winnipeg. So, again, this is not a debate, but I mean, I'm not comparison shopping here, but I'm saying that Lundell Perfetti is going to be the next Scheifele Couturier comparison, don't you think?
Who's
They're
that? Sorry?
totally different players. Like Lundell Perfetti, because they were chosen, it's going to be the next Scheifele Couturier sort of deal. And again, it's natural when guys are picked around one another. I mean, Lundell is a more defensive-minded player, but he's also put up offense this year. And again, this is not a race to see who gets there first. Same as Couturier. He came into the NHL sooner, became a regular sooner, all of those things. Let's see who's better in 5 years. But, I mean, it's part of the fun is looking at where guys are at. I mean, Lundell's had a great year. That's all I'm saying. Perfetti had a great year before he got hurt. They're two very good players.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question, but I'm going to go in a different direction. Julie Sue is rocking it here today. She says, how much merch do I need to buy to get an honest discussion on the coaching staff? Okay, I'm going to hop into this just because I think we've talked about this, but people clearly want to talk about it. I see it like this. I don't see that much of a difference between the Winnipeg Jets now before, like at this point with Dave Lowry, compared to what you saw from Paul Maurice. I've been on the record a number of times of saying this. I think he took a different approach in trying to, maybe, give certain people more opportunity, try to hold people a little bit more accountable with ice time, but the systems are all the same. So here's the deal. I don't know if this is Dave Lowry took a look at all the systems that Paul Maurice was using and said, I think these are winning systems, so let's just stick with these systems. I don't think that happened. I don't think that he felt like he could change them on the fly. So it's hard to gauge what Dave Lowry would do with a clean slate. I've been on the record. I don't think he's going to get that clean slate. I don't think that what we've seen from the Jets in response to his coaching style, I don't think there's been that moment where you've seen even Marty St. Louis, who believes he's going to be around next year with the Montreal Canadiens. They had that spark, right? They had the turnaround. They had all these media availabilities where they talked about how much more fun they were having and how much more interested they were in playing that style. There was never any of that. And maybe it has to do with what we were talking about before. Maybe, the Blake Wheeler kind of leadership on this team is one that says, hey, everybody, let's just keep these comments in-house. We don't want to talk about these things. It could be that. But I think that you would have seen more of these moments, of these aha moments of Winnipeg Jets players being like, hey, this is something. Hey, how about that? Oh, this is nice. We did see one, sorry, to credit where it's due, with Andrew Kopp when he was here, when he talked about the penalty kill and what's different in the penalty kill. And he said, we all got out of our rocking chairs and started pushing. So that was clearly a change that was made that the Jets seem to really, really gravitate towards and jump towards. But I haven't seen that. Now, I don't look at Dave Lowry and be like, his systems don't work, because I don't think they're his systems. I think it's the Jets systems that have carried over. And, given the fact that you've got, hey, if you're having, even Montreal last year when they changed over their head coach and an assistant coach, right? This coaching staff is still all the same in Winnipeg. I don't even call it a coaching change. I call it a coaching graduation. The top guy left. The next guy stepped into that spot and nothing else really changed. So I don't think that there's a reason to expect that the way the Jets play would change. And so to me, it comes down to this. I don't know that I can make a fair assessment of what Dave Lowry is as a coach this season when it comes to maybe the reason you are not getting the effort that you expect out of players. And I don't know if effort's that, but what we hear from Nick Ehlers tonight is clearly saying that his team is not playing the right way. So he can't seem to get his players to buy into playing the same way. Maybe it's because they don't believe in the systems, which he was, started with. Maybe he changed them over. I don't know if that's the case. I don't think we're going to get to see regardless of that. But I go back to my argument about this. Everyone wants to talk about the coaches and what the coaches have done here. But if the coaches are trying to get the Jets to play a more grinding style of game, then I don't know that the Jets have the team to do that. I think bringing in Morgan Barron is an effort by Kevin Cheveldayoff to do that. But I take a look at this team, and this is my answer to Nick Ehlers' question of not knowing why his team can't get away from wanting to play that perimeter, pass it around game. It's what they're all built to do. It's what Nick Ehlers does best. It's what Mark Scheifele does best. It's what Kyle Connor does best. It's what Blake Wheeler has evolved his game into as a perimeter passing player. He used to be that guy who grinded and went to the net like crazy. But the most important scorers and point producers on the Jets team are playing or play best when they play the game that Nick Ehlers is talking about them needing to get away from. So I don't hang this all on the Jets coaches. If you are trying to, what's the line I used before? If you're trying to paint stripes on a horse and call it a zebra, it's only going to last until the next rain and the stripes wash off, right? Like, I don't know that this team is capable of playing a grinded out defensive style with the key elements that they need to get going. And I've said this before, I said it earlier on. You could probably get this team to buy into 8 straight games like we saw towards the end of the year, and they beat the Edmonton Oilers. 8 straight games of grinded out hockey. We saw them do it against Edmonton. But at some point, this is who Mark Scheifele is. This is who Kyle Connor is. It's who Nick Ehlers are. These are racehorses that want to run. So you need to find a system that fits racehorses that want to run. And if you have too many racehorses, then you got to rejig what you have in your stable and bring in some plow horses and move out some racehorses and get some of those stud plow horses that can get the job done. But my take on the whole coaching thing is I don't hang this all on Dave Lowry and his coaching staff. I think that this is the players clearly own a huge part of this. I mean, effort, we probably have not seen the best effort that we could from this team, and they need to look into the mirror and address that. We probably haven't seen the best systems put together to make these players sing, and we probably don't necessarily have a mix of players that fits a specific style, which is why it's so hard for this team to find an identity. Ken, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the roster construction is the biggest issue right now. And the issue is that the Jets thought that after, 2 years of not having Dustin Byfuglien, that they would try to upgrade the back end and that everything would be fine. Well, it's not fine. And it hasn't been fine. So that means they're going to have to reconfigure the back end one more time this offseason. And they're going to have to improve the offense by getting some players that are willing to do certain different things. And I'm not advocating for the Jets to remove skill for their game, and neither is Dave Lowry. I mean, when he talks about getting the puck behind defensemen, he's talking about don't turn over the puck at either blue line. You can make all the plays that you want when you get into the zone, but when you're coughing up the puck and feeding into the transition game of the opponent, and the other times, that's when those teams get into deep, deep trouble. And that's happened to the Jets a lot this year. Again, could coaching cause some level of improvement? Yes, but this mix is not working. This is not an overnight thing. And I get it. I mean, the Jets roster looks a lot different than 2018. It needs to look a lot different next season when they're ready to go. And I'm not saying they got lots of important pieces and lots of important pieces that they want to keep going forward. But they're not going to be able to get to an elite level with the current construction, whether that's comparing them against Colorado or Florida or Minnesota even. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, these are the facts. The Jets are not close to where they wanted to be, and until they all show accountability for that, then you're in the same spin cycle. Sure, but I mean, to me, it's not about effort. I mean, I think the Jets are providing effort most nights. It's commitment. You're not committed to being a good enough team defensively. It was hard for them to accept in 2018, but they did it. And they had results with it. So, anyways, it'll be very interesting. I think there will be, there's going to be a coaching search. How big a shot Dave Lowry has at being involved in that, I mean, we'll see. But I think the Jets are going to do a full and comprehensive audit from the top down. And what that looks like at the end, I mean, we're going to have lots of time to talk about it. It's hard to guess right now, but I expect there to be significant change to the personnel. And I expect there to be changes on the coaching staff. And, how far that stretches, remains to be seen. But one quick thing. We're getting close to an hour. And I know a lot of people came here for, again, we're here to tell it like it is, but we don't need to be pounding on everything. I grew up with the red Titan Turbo, and the reason why I used that stick is because of Mike Bossy. So our thoughts quickly with the Bossy family. I was very young when the Islanders were a good hockey team. They're among my first hockey memories. I loved watching their team. I loved Bobby Nystrom. I loved Butch Goring. I loved John Tonelli. I didn't just love the stars. I loved what Bossy and Trache and those guys could do, and Potvin on the back end. Billy Smith, the goalie with attitude. That's the first team that I remember really watching and enjoying. As a kid, I really liked watching the Pittsburgh Penguins and Mario Lemieux, eventually Yager, Ron Francis, and those guys. But the Islanders are those are among my first hockey memories. And, obviously sad day with Mike Bossy passing away there. Just wanted to squeeze that in there quickly.
I don't want this to sound like a shot at you, Ken. You're just a couple years older than me, and that's just a couple years is enough for. Again, this is honestly
for sure.
Not
I was like 5 years old in 1980. I was 5 years old, so that means
right.
that you were 2 or 3.
Yeah,
right?
I was two in 1980, so it's just enough that my first memory. So
I
just missed them. I just missed the Islanders, so I didn't get kind of the whole Mike Bossy thing, and it's one of those things that I come back to it later. And you just take a look at his numbers, like they were talking about that. To me, it's interesting. We have these conversations about, goal scorers and who's the best goal scorer of all time. I mean, if you take a look at the kind of the pound for pound, and I say like the amount of games played, it's not even close. Well, sorry, it's him and Mario is what it comes down to. I mean, it is astounding the numbers that he put up time after time after time. I mean, the most lethal goal scorer that this game has ever seen, pound for pound. Ovechkin lasted longer, and you can talk about the duration of careers and all that kind of stuff. And definitely, I don't want to be taking a shot at a guy like Ovechkin, because Ovechkin's that guy who played so rough and tumble early on in his career that people were saying to him, "You're going to be limiting your career by playing the way you are," and he just never changed and just played like an absolute horse out there, just phenomenal. So give him credit for doing that. But there was also an element to that late 70s, early's game that didn't exist for the vast majority of what we've seen from Ovechkin's career, which did something to the body of players like Mike Bossy. Like Mike Bossy isn't the biggest guy in the world. It's like Wayne Gretzky left the game a little bit early with back injuries and problems because of what they had to endure during that time. These are slighter guys. I'm saying it right now, guys like Kyle Connor and Nick Ehlers, they wouldn't have survived very well in the game back in those days with the beatings that those players were having to take. So Mike Bossy went out, did what he did in an era where guys were absolutely destroying you out there in front of the net. His career is cut short, not because he didn't have the endurance, it's because of the era that he played in. It is one of the things we don't talk about enough. I always think Reggie Leach is the guy who always stands out to me. What could his career have been if he wouldn't have had the demons that he needed to deal with? But I take a look at Mike Bossy, and I think he, for me, is one of the big question marks of the game. What would Mike Bossy's career have looked like if you would have taken that player and placed him in an era where he didn't have to take as much abuse? What he did in that time was absolutely phenomenal player. Last question I want to ask you, Ken, and we had a little bit of a conversation about this, but I'm going to run through some of the stats, and I want to ask the chat room of this as well, because this is one that I find strange. If I went at the beginning of the year and I told you Kyle Connor is going to have a career year, he's going to score 40 goals, he's going to be well above a point per game. If I told you Mark Scheifele is going to remain a point per game player, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to have a bounce back season and be essentially on pace for close to his best season that he's ever had as a pro, that Blake Wheeler was going to be hovering around a point per game player, and in my opinion, playing better, offensively at the very least, than what I thought he was capable of playing at this age, and that Nick Ehlers would be hovering around his best season ever. Paul Stastny would be turning back the clock 10 years and doing things we hadn't seen him do in a decade. Josh Morrissey having the best season of his career. I'm fairly certain people would have looked and been excited and said, my God, what are we going to see from the Winnipeg Jets this year? My question to you, I guess, and to you in the chat room, I'd love to hear what you have to say about the whole thing, but how is it that individually so many of the Jets are having career or near career years, and yet it has not added up to success in the standings.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's the great mystery, right? So, I quickly, again, this is not a knock on the goaltending, but the one area that the Jets have had that has been an elite level has been Hellebuck. I don't think that this year his play has been quite as, I don't think it's as bad as some people think it is. It's way beyond the raw numbers, and Hellebuck has done some good things in terms of goals saved above expected, and he's been under siege a lot of nights in terms of the high danger chances he gives up. But the Jets have not, we've talked about this for all 11 seasons. It's a simple formula for the Jets. They need above average to elite level goaltending. And when they don't have that, they don't win hockey games because they're not good enough defensively. That's not a knock on Hellebuck. The fact that they're not good enough defensively is a knock on everything. That is why the goaltending has not been at as high a level. But the fact that the Jets have relied on elite level goaltending and not, improved those inadequacies on the defensive part of their game, that has led to a big time problem for the Winnipeg Jets. I think too, tons of people have said it, including you and me, Sean. The Jets are not greater than the sum of their parts, which sometimes teams can overachieve because people band together and they get good at certain things. The other thing that you and I talked about when we brought up this off the air, Jets special teams, especially the power play has saved the Jets from their defensive deficiencies at times over the years as well. Now their power play is I think they're back in the bottom third there. They must be. They have, based on how it's gone lately. And their penalty kill, which has been poor for the majority of, it's probably 8 or 9 of the 11 years, hasn't been good enough either. And mostly some of that was because of their terrible start to the year. That's fine. But it's still an issue. The special teams were a huge issue this year. And when I talk about defense, I mean team defense. The Jets' team defense is not anywhere near where it needs to be. And in terms of Hellebuck, I agree completely with Tracy. The fact that Connor Hellebuck got COVID in late August, right when he was probably ramping up his training, probably was a huge factor. And also he's a first-time parent, so we don't know what kind of sleep Connor Hellebuck is getting. I'm sure he's doing the best that he can, but it can't be easy. I'm not a parent, but I know those early years are tough. All years are tough probably for parents. And again, when I say goaltending hasn't been at a high enough level, I don't mean that that's Connor Hellebuck's fault. It means that the Jets were not good enough in front of him. And when you don't play at a super elite Superman level, it shows up in the box score. But to me, Nikolai Ehlers hit the nail on the head. The reason why none of those things that matter that you just said, and when I say they don't matter because it hasn't translated into results. That's why it doesn't matter that all these guys have had great seasons and, career seasons in many cases. They weren't committed enough to playing the right way. And there you go. Josh Morrissey's had a spectacular season, but Neil Pionk has not had a spectacular season. And some of the other parts, they didn't mesh the same way that we thought that they would. Also, too, the other part, too, third line had no identity for 60 games. And the fourth line didn't play. So if we're looking for, we can keep rattling off the reasons, but those to me are the biggest ones. And I know I mentioned goaltending first. It's not because I think it's the biggest problem. It's probably the least of the Jets' concerns when it comes to the other things that I've mentioned as issues. Because Connor Hellebuck still has had, again, whether you argue that it's above average or not, but it's not above average for his standard. Right, Sean? That's the thing for me. And we've talked about this before. There have been lots of nights where Connor Hellebuck did his best to keep the Jets in it, but the other guy at the other end just did enough or made one more save for them to pull out a win. Again, goaltending is the least of the Jets' concerns, but it hasn't masked their inadequacies, in my opinion. But they need to get that defensive portion taken care of quickly. And that doesn't happen without commitment. And I don't care what system a team plays. Can the systems and structure be improved? Absolutely. And they need to be improved, quite frankly. But if you don't have commitment, you don't have a chance. And that's going to be the next. That's the biggest biggest issue for whoever is behind the Winnipeg Jets bench next year. And it's not just the coach's issue. I think if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, you need to change the construction of the roster to help make that a reality for them.
You are bang on, Ken. I couldn't agree with that more. I thought tonight was a game that highlighted that, and I pointed out all those players who were having the years that they were having. But I guess I would say this. You take a look at guys like Bergeron or Marchand or some of the players that are up, around Kyle Connor in scoring in the league. You take a look at those players and think of how they play defensively. Of the guys that I mentioned, the Kyle Connors, outside of Pierre-Luc Dubois, how many of those guys do you look at and think of them as being defensive stalwarts? And I wonder about this, and I know I've said this, and I do believe this. I think that the Jets have a lot of the same kind of player, right, and that the balance is off. So that can be a problem. But the one thing I saw tonight, I was extremely impressed by Jonathan Huberdeau tonight. Not only is he good up ice, but he's good coming back the other way. And the commitment that those guys have now, he's no Patrice Bergeron. He's not taking over games defensively, but he's still, I'm very impressed by, the commitment that we saw from that team and its stars and their ability to get back into the game. I'm going to say this. I think it's ridiculous. We're not hearing as many people talk about Jonathan Huberdeau for the Hart Trophy. Everyone likes to use the excuse of Draisaitl and McDavid are together. And then you've got, it seems people in Toronto want to make that argument, but they don't want to make the argument about Matthews and Marner playing on the same team, 4 guys who are way up there in the standings. Jonathan Huberdeau, and I know this is I'll end with that, but Jonathan Huberdeau is kind of a little bit alone when it comes to scoring on that side of it. But this guy is an absolute assassin offensively. I tell you, I don't think there's enough talk about him. If I had a vote, which I don't, and probably a lot of you are going to be happy about it when I say this, Jonathan Huberdeau would have my vote for the Hart Trophy this season. I think he's been absolutely phenomenal. The tricky part about making that argument is he may not be the best player on his team, right? Like Barkov has that offensive ability, not quite what Huberdeau has, but he has a little bit of that Bergeron streak that we're talking about. So regardless, I think Huberdeau was phenomenal tonight. I think he's a lesson to watch for players like Kyle Connor, Nick Ehlers, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, about how you can play the game. I would say this, the Jets have great offensive numbers because I think they play to produce offense and they don't play that same way to produce defense. And that is a common theme common problem on this team, which is why they look great offensively on a season like this, but defensively, it's not that good at all. I'm going to close things down here. Before we do, just want to say, if you haven't gone to our YouTube page, go check it out. We've got lots of stuff for you there, including our long form podcasts. We're really proud of those. You should go check them out. While you're there, click like and subscribe. Other than that, if you're interested in merch, and I know Julie Sue, we gave you an answer. We didn't force you to go buy merch to get the answer, but if you want to go get some anyway, just go to www.shopsportsnet.store. Go check it out. We got lots of fun stuff there, and there's more coming. Other than that, let's shut her down here, Ken, because we're going to be doing this all over again tomorrow night. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the heat that you brought and the answering my questions in the chat room. Thank you so much. Let's reconvene, and do it all over again tomorrow night. Thanks, everybody.